Welcome to the Published and Paid podcast, where we share book, business, leadership, and life lessons in 20 minutes or less to help you build a thought leadership brand and business. My name is Jasmine Womack. I'm a former middle school language arts teacher turned seven-figure entrepreneur, and I am glad that you are here. Let's get started. All right, and welcome back to another wonderful episode of the Published and Paid podcast, where we talk about all things publishing your intellectual property through thought leadership books, courses, coaching programs, signature talks, and leadership development and life lessons. My name is Jasmine Womack, and I am excited to be here today. And today we have a very, very special guest, Dr. Justin Grimes, who's the CEO of Apply to Graduate School. And he's also an amazing member of our Published and Paid Mastermind. Hey, Dr. Grimes, welcome to the virtual stage.
Thank you so much. I'm glad to be here today.
Yeah, so please introduce yourself to all of our listeners. Let us know who you are, what you do, who you be.
Absolutely. Dr. Justin Grimes here, owner, speaker, author of Apply to Graduate School. I am the author of the book, 20 Questions to Answer Before You Apply to Graduate School, which is a step-by-step guide to help you walk through the process to getting admitted into graduate school successfully. At Apply to Graduate School, our mission is to make graduate education more equitable and accessible for all people. So we do that through workshops, speaking engagements, soon courses that are about to come out, and many other things to help people make a wise decision before they say yes or hit the submit button on the website.
I absolutely love it. Now, how did you get into that? Because it's not every day that I meet professionals who are helping experts to get into grad school. So how did you even get into this?
Yeah, so when I was doing my PhD at the University of Georgia, like many doctoral students trying to figure out what that dissertation topic is going to be on, the one class I took is a motivation class. And the reason why I took that class is you will take comprehensive exams or preliminary exams, and you're going to be looking for something that will be quote unquote easy to take. At the time, my ding fiance, maybe girlfriend, nevertheless, was already taking hers. And I was like, what are you taking this semester? And she signed up for this class. And I said, that sounds easy. Let me take it. And that led me to this whole topic that I was interested in, which is around student motivation. And I had a wonderful faculty member who led that class and said that by the end of this, you should either be able to incorporate motivation literature, attribution literature and theory into your work, or you're going to do something specifically with it. You pick your choice. And so I was a skeptic in that. And sure enough, it led me to the topic. And so my research has been on what factors influence individuals to pursue graduate education. I specifically looked at Black men. I was really concerned about why we were doing it and what was the interest behind that. And that led me into my career of working in graduate education while I was still doing the dissertation research, and then went to another professional role at Virginia Tech, where I was working in graduate education as a recruiter, as an admissions coordinator, as a DEI programmer. All duties and hats were assigned to me. And unfortunately, when I was on the road, I met a lot of individuals who were interested, students or working professionals who wanted to go to grad school, but really didn't understand the process. They might get really excited about this faculty member, this program they wanted to do, or they just wanted to get the letters behind their name. And they might apply and they maybe get in. And then after they got in, sometimes people are starting to have a little buyer's remorse that what they signed up for is not exactly what they're getting. Like many people who are probably listening to this, we decided to take out student loans without an adequate plan for figuring out how to pay for it. That was me. Cost me $53,000. And I didn't want to see people continue to dive into this major life-changing experience without a plan, without really knowing all the details, the behind the scenes that I know that faculty members are looking at, the decision makers are looking at when they say yes to a person. I wanted people to be able to go into this with making an informed decision that can fit within our lives. I think oftentimes people approach it like, I want to go to school, but school really needs to fit within your life and it needs to meet a need and a goal. What are you trying to accomplish? What are you trying to achieve? And making sure that what you are learning, what you are doing helps you to achieve that goal. If it's not that, I'm more likely to tell people press pause on this next step of your academic life.
That's so good. That is so good. I have a few questions for you. First off, hats off to the real PhDs. Like we
Yeah, not the honorary
we're
folks.
not from a real school, okay?
Mhm.
Not the storefront colleges, okay?
Yes.
Shouts out to the real PhDs, the real EDDs, right? The real doctorates, right? One of the things that you said was that you encountered so many people who either wanted to and really, didn't know how to or didn't have the confidence, or applied to graduate school, maybe didn't get in, or maybe got in and then had buyer's remorse. And there are some things, there were two key things that you said here. And that's, you need to have a need and a goal behind going to graduate school, and that it needs to fit into your life. Now, I really want to talk about this because I see so many people, especially folks who start businesses, they're not really giving it time to grow. They're like, okay, it's not growing, it's not going fast enough. And they just default to going to school, not even really knowing, not even really having a plan, right? Not even really having a focus. It's just, okay, I think this is what I'm supposed to do. So for those people that just default to school, like, what is your suggestion for them? And especially when they default, but they don't really even know, have a clear plan or goal.
Yeah, the first thing I tell people is that school will not circumvent life's challenges. That life is going to happen. And if you are looking for school as a reason to not enter into the working industry, to not dive deeper, to dig deeper into your business as more like an avoidance of anything, then it is going to reveal different aspects of you, particularly around that avoidance, that will show up to your front step really quickly. The next thing I tell people is that when you're trying to use it as a filler, per se, as you're figuring your way out through life, what happens if you don't like it? What happens if now that you've done it, you've got the degree, but the thing you're most interested in is something completely different? And so I tell people to really think about what that thing is that they want to do and to make a really good decision based on that. I'm always concerned that people are jumping into it. And I get it. I was one. After I completed my bachelor's degree, I didn't ever plan or thought I would leave the state of Arkansas. I was going to be in the state forever. And I did an online master's degree. And I took an internship, and the internship in Philadelphia at Temple University was my chance to try it out, to be away, to explore new opportunities. And it was the greatest decision I could have ever made. And it ultimately led me to decide to leave the state of Arkansas and go live and work in many other states. And so when it comes to graduate school or even business, really being willing to make a big decision requires some strategy. But I think it's important to try something, just see what happens and really go from there.
So, yeah, so you mentioned some things here, right? And one of the things that you said that stuck out to me was that if someone is going to pursue a graduate degree, then they need to have a need and a goal, and it needs to fit into your life. Now, I've seen so many people go back to school as a result of a breakup. I've seen so many people, pursue entrepreneurship or business ownership, and it doesn't work out the way that they want it to when they think it should. And it's almost as if school is a default.
Mhm.
And I actually was having a conversation with someone the other day where this was their situation. They were like, listen, I'm going back to school and I'm not really sure what I'm supposed to be doing right now, but I'm just going back to school. And like you mentioned, in previous conversation, people use school as a default. So what would you say to people who, they find themselves in this situation where there's been some type of life challenge and their first course of action is to go back to school.
Yeah, that happens quite a bit for a lot of people that, historically, when the economy isn't doing well, when people are facing all types of life challenges and struggles, career indecision, the default is to look at school. I need to get more education. I need to be back at a setting that I'm most comfortable in, especially if you're a high achiever who's trying to accomplish a goal. School is a good one for you because this is one you've been doing for a long time. And so I tell people that school should not serve as a distractor for you. It should not serve as a avoidance strategy from addressing those things that are leading you to it. One of the things that disappoints me is that so often people are going back, and then because you avoided whatever the career decision was, or maybe you really need to go have a conversation with a therapist, that might have been $150.
Mhm.
I'd rather you spend the $150 having that conversation per week with a therapist than to be investing $100,000 in a degree program that's not aligned with your goals or your vision. You're not really interested in the topic, but you're just a learner. You just really enjoy learning, and you enjoy being in a setting where you can challenge things. I strongly believe that, especially at the doctoral level, it is going to begin to help you unpack a whole lot of personal stuff, because the expectation is much more. And so I often tell people, just take a moment to pause and reflect on what is it that you really want out of life. And based on the position and the place you are right now, where do you see yourself going? And how can the next thing you do help you get there? If it looks like getting that master's degree or that certificate or that doctoral degree to get there, then let's move forward with that. But let's move forward with that knowing that we've got to be fully immersed in this experience. We can't be 1 foot in and 1 foot out. It's costing too much to do that. And cost is not all financial. There's an emotional cost to it. There's a time cost to it. There's a physical cost to it. You can't get back those 2 or 3 hours when you're studying late at night, or you can't get back, or it can produce a new stressor for you too. That's the other part. If you want to talk to somebody who's in a process right now of going through it and ask them what's stressing you out about this process, they probably got a list of the things that they can tell you, right? But if you compound that stressor on top of other things, I don't think that's necessarily always the best way to go forward. And so I always, tell people, especially when I'm having an initial conversation, tell me your why. What's got you so interested that this is the thing you want to do? And answer that question of what's my why? Because the why is what will sustain you to the end of this process. Because there's some things that are going to be beyond your control. You cannot control when people are going to allow you to move forward in certain stages. Sometimes you can't control grading. You can't control if somebody's going to say yes or no to you. You're going to get the scholarship, the fellowship. You don't have a lot of control in this process. And this process requires you to relinquish control. And so if you're out of control in life, this might not be the move for you.
Right. Look, if you're out of control in life, it might not be the move. I think I was talking about it last semester because I'm in school to get my doctorate. And I had to take part 1 of a statistics class. And the professor was not, English as a first language and had a very, very thick accent. And when I tell you, it just was not, I already didn't know. I was already I had a lot of apprehensions around statistics in the first place because I struggled with it in my master's program. But then to add on, she was a phenomenal instructor. She cared a lot, but I didn't understand her teaching methods and I couldn't understand her communication. And it was just, I was like, oh my gosh, like, listen, just wake me up in 4 months.
I think that's a class that gives most individuals the greatest fear. People fear statistics. If you're not a quantitative person, a numbers person, most people do not get excited about this. And luckily now we have so many more resources, YouTube, and ChatGPT, and so many other AI softwares to help people. But I think it's very revealing.
Saved me because I was putting questions in there that simple, like, what does this mean? Simplify this. Point me to another reason.
Exactly. But I think that's also, kind of really reflective of where business can be too. Like when you hit a moment where you're not as comfortable in a particular space. And you've got to make a decision on how you're going to move forward. Because I also look at it like, what could I potentially miss out on? How can this discomfort that I'm experiencing help me to grow professionally or personally? And even the last thing is really, I'm an achiever. So I love to make things a goal or make something like a contest or competition. How much can I get to the end of this? And so when I think about my stats class, it was by far the hardest one that I took. And I'm a storyteller, qualitative researcher. So I love narrative and story. We can interview and talk all day, but you ask me to give you R, it's going to be a different thing. But I appreciate it now because when I hear someone say, we recently surveyed a group of people, and I immediately got questions. How many did you survey? Where were they surveyed at? What was the R? What was the no? I got a whole lot of questions because I'm not trusting your stuff at face value.
Right.
And I think that's a beautiful thing to experience, to be able to question things in that way that I don't know or can't comfortably say if I had not done my doctoral degree, that I would be in this position to not only question, but to really be a great translator.
Right. Like, is this statistic or is this data even valid based on, like, we can have a whole conversation about that. So let's do a pivot here, because you started out with apply to grad school, and the idea to start it was based on research from an elective, if I'm not mistaken, that you took during your PhD studies, and it actually grew into a business. And so you decided to write a book about based around the tips and the strategies that you had learned and that you had been teaching. So share with us about your writing journey, because I know by the time I met you, you already had your book.
It's a very interesting process. Academic writing and book writing are not the same thing. And so this required a lot more vulnerability. One of the things that I initially did was just free write. That's how I did a lot of work in my master's and doctoral degree, is outline, number one, what are the things that you think people need to know? The second part was free write what you know and get those things out. Number three was research what's out there and start to form your own ideas based on the research. This is a very PhD level way you form things anyway. And I did it. But what the interesting part was, I wrote this book at probably the most difficult time in my life. During that time period, during the pandemic, my mother was diagnosed with stage 4 thyroid cancer 4 months before my father had just passed away. My mother-in-law was battling stage 4 cancer as well. So I wrote this book kind of really in the place of managing grief, managing stress, managing going to appointments. So I'm taking her to radiology. I'm taking her to cancer, treatments, cancers that are not treatable, like you're not curable. And she ultimately passed away before I could finish the book. And so that's difficult to manage. And in hindsight, would I write it during this major traumatic experience? Probably not. But I had already started the process before things came up. And to a degree, it was probably the greatest gifted thing that I could have done. For her to be able to see that and to be able to carry that forward. I know that background and that story. But that's what, I wrote the book, I tried it out, and I went through a series of editors. Some were not great until I finally got to something I thought would be a little bit better. But the writing process for me was over the course of 3 months. And that is partially because I was dealing with major life things. And I was traveling back and forth. I mean, I was driving, me and my wife, to Virginia, to my mother, to North Carolina, to her mother. So every probably week, we were somewhere different. So that's a lot to manage when you're thinking about writing a book. And I still managed to do it. And it was a great experience. I loved it. It was fun for me because I got to say what I wanted to say. And I knew that whatever I was going to write was going to help people. And I started with that at the very beginning. Like, how can you produce something that's going to help people? I found a document about getting into grad school, but nobody really had written a book. Like I tell people, if you want to take a test, LSAT, MCAT, there's books about that. You want to write a dissertation? holler at Dr. Goins. Like there's things about the process either to take a test or to help you get to the finish line, but nothing is out there that walks you through the process of actually getting in. And so I said, if you can't find it, then that means you must write it.
You shared so much there because, and first and foremost, my sincerest condolences, on the loss of and passing of your mother. So many people would use that circumstance as a reason to say, I'm not doing this right now. And you actually, in between your mother and your mother-in-law, leaned into it. Was it an outlet for you at that time?
Yeah, I think it was an outlet. I was also in a point in my job where I was experiencing career dissatisfaction. I was approaching what was going to be the end of the contract. So I was really trying to just find my way to the next thing. And I thought that this would be the outlet. And I had a great mentor that told me that in your last year of this contract, I need you to start a business. I need you to write a book. I need you to gain as many skill sets from your employer before you leave. And I did all of those things, even in the midst of all the stuff that was going on, because I was like, this is a great challenge. I like the challenge. I accept your challenge. Let's go forward with it.
That's good. That's good. And so you went from, going back and forth with your mother-in-law, some job challenges to writing this book. Okay. And so what happened next? Like the contract ended, and then what did you end up doing with the book?
Yeah. So I published the book. I wound up getting another job before the contract ended. Had a few different offers, but which was good. And I published the book in September of 2021, started a new job and started it and knew quickly, this is not really what I want to do. I was in the DEI space at the time and thought that that's what I was going to do. And this was just going to be a part of that. And my child was born in January of 2022. And during that time period, I realized, I don't know if I want to go back to this job. I've got these DEI contracts that are sustaining me. I've published this book. I've only sold a few copies because I have no marketing strategy, nothing in place. But I sold a couple of books. And I got this job, but I want to do something different. And a mentor and a coach at the time said, and my therapist at the time said, what would it look like if you just try something different? You've been talking about wanting something different, and this business thing seems to interest you. What would it look like to give it a try? What would it look like to show your daughter what it looks like to go for your dreams? And that's what I did. And I turned, the right thing said at the right time by the right person. And I quit in April of 2022 and dove full into business. Now, some people are like, you quit months after your child was born? Absolutely. And I haven't been back since. And God has shown up every instance. And I've tried. I've definitely tried to go back a couple of times. And I'm like, if this is not supposed to happen, and that was my prayer, God, if this is supposed to happen, get me to the end of 22. Get me through the end of 23. And each year, he has shown up. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to be obedient and just get out the way because my way is not working and your ways work. So let me just continue with that path. And that's, kind of what has transpired since then.
Listen, because there's so much that even though I've known you, I'm just hearing some of this story. You and your wife had a baby and you're like, listen, I'm not going back to the job. I'm done. How was that? Because after a child is born and then a spouse is like, I'm not going back to work, like that's a huge risk. So how was that, family wise? And did that give you more determination to like just go after it and grind?
Yeah, I'm thankful that I have a very supportive wife and she loves the work she does. She's a professor and she loves doing that. And so it was a conversation, and I'm a money person. So I had already been stacking resources in the event that something went wrong.
So you were like, listen, I don't have nothing, but I'm just walking away. You prepared.
I'm just going to walk away. Yeah. But I had, I really sat down and looked at our budget and our expenses and said, okay, how much do we need to sustain the rest of the year? Based on the contracts that I have now, do I have that? I do. So I can take the financial risk till December comfortably. before tapping into any savings in these things. The second part is, this is what I want to do. Do I have your support? And she's like, yes, I see the way that this job is stressing you. I see how you're feeling about it. And I went back, I tried 2 weeks. There was a conversation with an HR person and my supervisor that I said, if they say this thing, it's going to be, I'm good. And we had a meeting and they both said the thing. And I said, I'll be prepared to receive my resignation letter tomorrow. But it required a lot of intentionality. It required me to really think about the money, to pray a lot. And I'm a big on prayer. So every day still is a lot of prayer. But it's also thinking through, when you do this, then what? Because I knew I could always come back to higher education. With a doctoral degree and at the time, 17 years experience working in higher ed, I could get a job. But this new area is going to require some new things. And so let's just try it out and see. And it works. But that has been based on having the support of my wife, of my family, of my friends, and really sitting down and saying, what does it look like to go all in on this? And I wasn't all in at first. I was kind of like, I'll get another DEI contract. And I did. But I realized that wasn't even the space I really needed to be in. I told people that DEI pays my bills, but graduate school is my passion. And more, I left what paid the bills and moved to the passion. And now the passion pays the bills.
That's so good. That's so good. So at some point, you decided, I want more, I need more. And we ran into each other, right? Mm-hmm. And so by the time I met you, I think that I know that you were recommended or referred my way. And I know mm-hmm. that you had, participated in a few of the virtual workshops. Mm-hmm. So with being a full-time entrepreneur, with being a published author already, what were your goals at that time? And what were you looking to do? In what ways were you looking to grow?
Yeah, at the time, I wanted to get to like 100 book sales. I wanted to book a couple of speaking engagements and see what I needed to do to replace my income. But I had a lot of ideas at the time, like, maybe it's a course, maybe it's consulting, maybe it's speaking. And so I just jotted down all the ideas of different things that I wanted to do. And I just started with the book piece and said, okay, I need some help. And I reached out to one of my fraternity brothers, and he introduced me to Dr. Ramon. And Dr. Ramon was like, yeah, you need to go holler at Jasmine. Like, here's the videos, you need to watch it. And I was listening and I was like, I like this. This is good. I don't know yet. Let me look at a couple of other people. And then I watched another one and I thought the same thing that a lot of people do. You go through the 4 or 5 day event and you just kept coming. I kept coming back to being like, what's that thing she said? Okay, I wrote that down. Let me try that thing out. And then Dr. Ramon was like, hey, so you're going to go to the event? And I was like, what event? He was like, the live event. I said, yeah, let me see. And I was like, I don't know. This is most things when it comes to money, I got to be like, okay, is this really what I want to do? Shoes are about the only thing I will buy without question. And that's probably why I have too many now. But I was like, what's the financial incentive? Okay, cool. And again, I go to prayer for everything. God, if this was supposed to happen, give me the money to make this happen. Give me the money for this whole event, everything. And he said no. And I'm like, okay, but I already signed up, so I hope that on the other end, you're going to meet me there. He's like, we'll just see. And I got there, and I think day 2, I got an email for a speaking engagement that covered the entire cost of my experience at Published and Paid. And I was like, ooh, okay. So this is supposed to be it. And then by day 3, when you were talking, I think day 3 or 4, you were talking about the mastermind. I was like, hey, listen, you did this one. No, I'm wrong. That happened on the way. Day 2 is when I got another email for a contract that was like, okay, here's the cost of the mastermind. At least meet me at like 50%, guys. Can we do that? And he was like, cool, boom, here's that. So each instance, like things just kept happening. And I was like, okay, this is it. But even, I said the first 2 hours of the live event, from the DJ to just skimming the workbook, I was like, oh, this is going to be good. This is the thing I've been missing. And I remember texting my wife and my best friend and said, oh, this is the thing I've been missing right here. This is going to give me every single thing I need to go forward.
That's so powerful. And you know what? I have a similar prayer. Like when I'm thinking about working with a mentor or coach, God, listen, send me a sign. If this is it, provide the funds, provide the extra funds. I don't even
Mhm.
want to come out with what I got. It's got to be
Exactly.
extra. It's got to be extra, right? So I
Mhm.
know that that's for this. But that's so powerful because I think oftentimes a lot of what you described is faith,
Mhm.
like walking in faith. And what one of the things that I think that people wait for, they wait to try to have all their ducks in a row before they make a move, but
Mhm.
you had to make a move first, and
Mhm.
then your faith was met with sustenance. Your faith was met with the resource, and that alone is a testament to itself. All right, so you were at the event, all of
Mhm.
these things started happening on the way at
Mhm.
the event. You're not the first person that has said that.
I'm sure not. No, this
You
happens every time I'm coming to be in contact with you. Something happens.
And so you're at the event. I remember a conversation we had there too, and you actually ended up joining the mastermind.
Mhm.
And now you're in it, you're doing the work. And where we started is
Mhm.
not where you are now.
Mhm.
So, and I know that we talked about this before we came on. I think that when you started, one of your biggest hindrances was mindset. So can you
Yeah.
talk a bit about some of the mindset challenges that you had initially and how you have grown and evolved?
Yeah. Some of the ones is being in the position of a learner. I think after having the doctoral degree and things I've achieved in my life, like many people, we're in the position that we know it all and we think we can figure our way through it. And one of the things I had to adopt really quickly is that you don't know it all and there's more for you to learn. The second thing is to have trust and faith in other people's expertise, which is what I now preach and tell other people, that there are experts out there for a reason who know things and can guide you there. So that was a change for me. The second piece is if you're waiting for them to tell you where to start in the curriculum and all these things, you're going to be waiting. And that's exactly what I was doing, waiting until I finally decided you've got to dig into this deeper. You've got to start working through the content. Everything you need is literally in there. And this, I say probably the last piece is feeling intimidated. Like I'm entering into this space where some of us are like new, like no books. Some people are further along. And I'm the type of person looking at the people who are way further along. And that was intimidating to hear their questions and to hear the things that they were saying initially. And I was like, listen, closed mouths don't get fed. And you are not going to get to the place that you want to be just by not submitting anything, by just constantly coming on the weekly calls or bi-weekly calls saying nothing. So what do you lose in getting this expert advice that you have bought into, that God has met you each time? Why not ask the question? Why not get the most of it? Even this morning at the gym, I was looking at what my bookings were last year, and I had like two. And from I think this year already, this fall, I'm already at 10, and there's still more to come. And so the calendar is booked and busy and blessed. And there's just a lot that I have learned, a lot of structure that I've created for my business that makes my day more worth it. I felt like I was just scrambling and just like, I'm gonna wake up today and just try something out. And that was not the appropriate approach to do it. I
Right.
needed to create structure. And that's what work provided. Work provided me structure, whereas entrepreneurship didn't necessarily have that. And I loved it. I loved the freedom, but the freedom wasn't paying bills. So you needed to immediately create some structure. And that's what has given me. It's given me a new sense of confidence, a new sense of joy and purpose. I can pitch better to people. I'm not kind of second guessing myself as much as I used to. I can take the no's from people a lot better than I used to. They're not personal. I hired a person to do design work. Before I was like, I can do this. I can Canva my way through it. No, get somebody else on Fiverr
With the
who is
quick.
more skilled to do the work. Like make the investment. Because each time you make the investment, it will be there. It will come back to you, probably double, triple what you asked for. But you've got to learn to relinquish that control, have strong faith, and let the things happen what are going to happen. And I just strongly believe that everything has happened as a result of doing those things.
Listen, you shared so many gems, and one that I really want to hone in right now is that you said that you came into the program and you were waiting for instruction and you were waiting for somebody to tell you what to do. And I think that it's so profound that you acknowledge that about yourself, because when it comes to entrepreneurship and higher level programs, I think that there's a shift that people have to make. Like when you go into a job, someone's there to tell you every day, like what to do, what things you're looking for. But as the CEO of your business, you have to determine what you're going to do. You've got to set
Mhm.
your goals, and so when you join a program to help you reach those goals, it's more so like, okay, these are my goals. Let me go into what I need to help me reach these goals, and
Mhm.
it's more so being having clarity around what you want to do and being self motivated and self directed to get that done. What you said that you made that shift. What do you think that aha moment was for you to go from waiting for instruction to let me now take advantage of it?
Yeah. The aha moment is when I'm listening to someone else on Instagram, whether live or some video they've done about a particular area. Let's say that it was creating a funnel, and I hear someone else say something about a funnel, and I'm like, I wonder if we already got that in the port. It's already there. Because then my mind is like, okay, I got to create this thing. No, you don't. There's a template right there. Just follow the template and do that. And then that just led me to more. So I think it's really hearing another voice and then knowing that I have the support. I have a coach who's already there, who's already given me everything that I need. I just need to follow there. And I think that's some people are like that, right? They still are kind of like, but I'm not sure. The other moment was when I realized that you have already invested your time and your resources into this. And what's the point of looking for something else?
Mhm.
Just stay in it, right? Like be fully in it. And that happened as a result of positioning myself as a student again. I
Oh
had been out of
gosh,
school
yes.
for a few years and I was like, if you're gonna get the most out of this, you got to be willing to be a student.
Got to be willing to learn. And I think that when people come into coaching programs, a lot of people look at it as like, okay, this is something I'm paying for, as opposed to let me be a learner again.
Mhm.
And it is a different mindset shift. And I also see what you spoke to as well. Folks have shiny object syndrome all the time. I
Mhm.
actually like you're in a program, and because you're not committed to it, you're listening to this person all up under, and I'm talking to somebody out there, all up under the comments, all in the comments, "Ooh, I need this, I need that." But the very same thing that you say that you need, you literally already have access to. You're just not taking advantage of it. So this is a point in time when we have to, and I want you to take a page out of Dr. Grimes' book with like really leaning in and taking advantage of and utilizing what you already have access to, instead of
Mhm.
constantly looking for more or more or more, or what you feel like the best thing is going to be. The best thing is going to be when you utilize your resources and you create your next level. And so let's talk about now, because I know like even when we had the mastermind retreat in March, you were in one space and now you're like, oh, my calendar is pretty much booked out for the fall. You're creating the sales process and all of the things. Were there any shifts that you had to make to like really step into and embrace that next level of abundance? Because the
Yeah, I
abundance
did.
requires different things from you too.
It did. And one thing is being able to navigate disappointment. Sometimes you can get so laser focused on trying to get this contract, trying to get this person, trying to build this piece, and it doesn't happen the way you want it to. And you can just be like, see, I know I wasn't supposed to do that. You just got to keep working at it. In between March and where I am now, it was building out the funnel and being willing to do that. The next part is to actually hire someone to do some stuff. Like you've been saying it all the time, right? If I had just been obedient to listening to it, and then I finally did, and it was good, And I tightened up a lot of things. I hired a lawyer to design a thorough contract for me. And it was needing to just say, embrace this here, but do your work. Like, you've got to do the work and you've got to be patient with yourself. And the biggest lesson I learned in the summer is grace. You've got to give yourself a lot more grace. You've got to give people grace. They may not be ignoring your email intentionally. It might have just went to spam, or they might have been dealing with something else. So a lot of these things I had to do differently. And I felt like the summer was my building season. It was preparation for what is now happening. I didn't see that at the time, but now I can look back and say, I'm glad that some of those no's were no's. I'm glad you tried that to go to that event and that led to this relationship. You talk a lot to us about building relationships and how things have to take time. And that is what changed for me in March, was instead of constantly being like, here's the pitch, say yes now, build the relationship. Build value. Like, I'm really big on understanding that now, which is you've got to show people the value of what you bring. You've got to get yourself out there. Don't nobody know you exist if you're not out in the space. So I have to tell myself that. I have that written down in front of me every day. People got to know you exist.
Yes, they have to know. So you said when you first started, your goal was to sell 100 books.
Mm-hmm.
What do you feel about that goal looking back on it? And what is your goal now?
Oh, that goal was way too small. It was too small. And I surpassed that. Way surpassed that. The goal now is to really focus in on developing this course. I'm working on 2 courses specifically. One is how to write a personal statement, graduate school essay. That should come out in probably the next month. And then before the end of the year, to put out my course about how to pay for graduate school. Based on what I keep seeing with student loan debt, knowing how much people are paying, and we don't quite know what's going to happen, the future of our legislation and politics, people need this. And my goal is for people to figure out how to pay for it without taking out student loans. That's the big premise. And I got a lot of ideas. I got a lot of research. I'm a researcher. So I got a lot of information, and I don't want to hoard it any longer. I want to teach people that.
Listen, when I tell you, I was just talking to somebody yesterday, and she was saying, she's in a doctoral program. She was like, I'm trying to pay for it cash, but this, that, and the third, it's a real thing. And it'll take a burden off of a lot of people, I think, especially, folks who want to go back to get a graduate degree, so that's definitely needed. And I'm excited to see you bring that one to market. I absolutely am. Okay. So to everyone that's listening, if you could give them 3 statements of wisdom, in regards to life, business, writing their book, what would it be?
I'm looking at a thing I have in my office. It's a frame, and it says, your attitude determines your direction. That's going to be the number 1. Below that is my second one that I really love, which is be committed to your goals, whether that's graduate school, entrepreneurship, just be committed, be fully committed to that. And my third piece of advice to people is give yourself grace and exercise faith. Listen. Regardless of what you believe in, if you don't believe in something, faith supersedes all things. But you've got to be willing to have some strong faith, some unconventional faith, that if nobody else understands and gets it, you get it. And that for me is more confirmed when I was watching the Olympics over the last few months, Paralympics and the other Olympics. Like, I'm seeing people do unimaginable things because their faith is really high.
Yes. Oh gosh. And I can't think of a better way than to close out the episode. So can you tell everyone how they can contact you, where they can find you, grab a copy of your book? Because I know we've got some listeners that are thinking about going back to graduate school, and you need some help.
Yeah. So the website is apply2graduateschool.com. On there, we've got blog posts, free resources. The book is on there. It's a lot of stuff on there. The next thing is follow me on Instagram at IamJGrimes, or apply to the number 2 G School. There I get a lot of information on things. Also on YouTube at Apply to Graduate School is another place that you can find me. And I'm happy to connect with you and steer you in a direction that I think will be very satisfying and helpful for you in your life.
Awesome. Awesome. Make sure that you all connect with Dr. Justin Grimes on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and all the places, and check out his website and his book if it's your goal to pursue your master's, your doctorate, or any other advanced degree, and you need an extra push getting there. All right. And thank you once again for tuning in to another episode of Published and Paid Podcast. Make sure that you make sure that you share this episode, and make sure that you leave us some reviews, and of course, subscribe. And until next time, peace, love, and impact.